live here. Just give a few more seconds as we get up on other platforms. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I've got a good show for us here tonight, I think. Welcome to the Friday show, every Friday at 7 p.m. Central. I'm your host, Sean Lawyer, and I'm a former soldier turned spiritual seeker, and I'm just trying to go find people to talk to that have different perspectives and worldviews when it comes to spirituality. And I've got a great guest for us tonight. I've got Lindsay Shannon, and Lindsay, instead of going through a whole biography and telling people who you are, I'm just going to pass it over to you and let you introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, I'm Lindsay. I am a psychic. I'm a medium. I'm a Reiki healer. I'm starting to host retreats, so I'm throwing a retreat leader in there as well. But yeah, I give readings to people. I try my best to work on self growth and pass things along as I can. So just figuring things out, just like you as well.
I like that. Just figuring things out. That's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that the journey is kind of the whole point, right? So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Day by day.
Day by day. Yeah, every day as it is. And I ask most guests this: what spirituality to you? I mean, like when someone asks you that, I know it's a difficult question, but I always like to hear people's answer.
Yeah. Gosh, that's such a good question. And I think it does like encompass a lot. But I think spirituality to me has grown into this, I guess, a lot of hope, a lot of faith in something that's greater than me, bigger than us kind of thing. I do think that like in order to access that, you kind of have to be willing to look inward and, um, you know, self growth is like a big part of it. So by working on yourself, I think it opens you up to all of these, you know, like epiphanies or breakthroughs and things like that. And to me, that's kind of like the spiritual experience, not necessarily like what everybody thinks of like stereotypically. Like, I don't know, at least being a psychic, I know people are like, okay, like you see things, you hear things, that kind of thing. But and that's all great, that's definitely like part of it, but I think spirituality is like deeper than that. It's like the meaningful part, like something that brings you meaning and purpose.
Okay. Yes, it does bring us meaning and purpose. I find that as well. And it is about growth. I think it is about because I think we think we have some answers, right? And then we find out new things, and we see new things. Maybe we don't see it with our eyes, but we see it with all of our senses, and then we have more questions. I think that's kind of a really interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, just continual learning, really. I mean, and just being open to anything, like new experiences or, like I said, epiphanies, little moments of insight that kind of encourage you
Sure.
further.
Well, what most people kind of have something that sets them on a spiritual path. Is there something that kind of puts you on this journey?
I mean, I think it's like a combination of like real world things and then also an opening of doors, so to speak, energetically. So, I mean, I definitely, I feel like was nudged into this by a very toxic romantic relationship. Um, there was a breakup there, and I think a lot of patterns were kind of thrown in my face, and I recognized that in going through that. And then that sort of transitioned into my mind opening up a little bit and realizing that things aren't always as they seem, or like my perception, can be one thing in reality can be another to somebody else. So I think that going through that real world experience kind of opened my mind. And then when that happened, I had, you know, some floodgates open, so to speak, with like the psychic senses. So I had some experiences with that. And then that sort of triggered some curiosity, and I kind of just followed that. So I don't know. I guess it's a combination of the two.
I get that. Yeah, when I had my moment of understanding or clarity or whatever people call it, it's I had all this flood of information. It was really super awesome, enlightening and useful, but I also had all these questions that I needed to go answer to kind of like parse it out and figure it out. It was a little disorienting, as it can be, even if it's this beautiful thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I remember like I think everybody understands breakups, and my
Sure.
friends definitely understood that part. But once I started, asking questions, I just feel like I can like see this like, energetic sort of like my third eye was opening, right? Like people dream or like daydream, that kind of thing. Like it's the same thing. I was just like seeing this sort of like expansive something going on, and I was asking my friends like what is this, do you have this? And they were just like, love you, but no, don't understand, like can't, I have no idea.
Yeah, it's a little bit. I think when you see the universe, you see the divine, or you see yourself, however we describe it, however different, different perspectives, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
then you it's like you've seen something and you want to share that with people. And then some people, even if they haven't seen it, are receptive to like talking about it and hearing it. And some people have like no concept of, well, I can't relate to this, so I can't really have this conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be hard. I think that can be a little isolating in ways.
Yeah, for sure. I think like a big part of what I'm doing now is like readings and things like that. It's definitely a big part of it is translating. So like what I'm experiencing, what I'm seeing that is from my understanding meant for someone else, like trying to relay that into something digestible, that people can really understand. Because I think, yeah, like a lot of it's just a mystery, like we don't fully understand how things work all the time. So I try my best to, hopefully make it something that others can understand and like take something from.
Sure. Yeah, I think teachers are, we're all seekers, but when we're teaching people, we're trying to help people. It is translation a lot of times. Like, because students sometimes they don't understand, or they don't have the perspective, and perspective is really important. So it's all about how can I translate what I've seen or what others have seen into something that is digestible to people.
Right.
Especially when we're conditioned to have a very specific set of perspectives when it comes to how we view the world. You talked a little bit a while ago about our reality, and we each kind of have our own reality that we're kind of seeing the world and the universe through.
Yeah. And I think like, this comes up a good bit. Just, living in the realm that I've chosen to live in. I grew up Catholic. So like that by itself is a very specific and, by my standards, rigid perspective that was kind of given to me as a kid. And I think growing out of that was, there were growing pains associated with that. I think ultimately it was best for me. But yeah, I mean, you can't always choose what you're given, especially at a young age, like who you're around, what you're consuming and like taking in as far as information and learning goes. But like I said, it's a journey. So like over time, you kind of like take what makes sense and leave the rest, and that changes day by day.
Exactly. And that's what I like about being able to explore everything around the world. You can take what works for you and leave the rest, because sometimes it's not for us, right?
Yeah.
You talk about radical self-acceptance and helping people with that. What is radical self-acceptance?
Yeah. Well, so for me, that sort of relates to just this idea of me hiding this big part of me for so long, because I think, well, one, I didn't understand it. So I didn't ever, I think, feed into it enough to really make it a part of me that I really understood. So like, I don't know how anybody else would have understood, but I think for a while I felt like, and this can be related to the spiritual stuff, hiding it from people, not sure of whether or not they're going to judge you for something that you
Sure.
really, are into or not. But then also, real world examples, like, I'm sure a lot of people feel the pressure from parents to, have an impressive job or like make a lot of money or, have a certain lifestyle. And, for me, all of that kind of, it weighed me down for quite a while. The corporate job, the societal and familial expectations, And it ultimately led to a pretty big disconnect of my understanding of who I am and what I want to be doing. And I think, not everybody struggles the same way, but I think that's a pretty common thing. No, it's a spectrum, right? Like people may struggle with that on a big level or on a small level, but I think it's just been important enough to me and my happiness to really kind of dive into all the parts that are important to me. And I think that if I can help others do the same and really find out what it is that lights them up, or, even just things that might seem a little like risque to talk about, like I want to be that safe space for people to explore and just see like, okay, this is a little weird or a little different, but like it makes me happy. So like, why not get into it a little bit more? Because I think in my own doing that, it really opened up a lot of doors for me.
Yeah, it seems like a big part of the journey is self-acceptance, accepting all these things about ourselves. Because we spend a lot of our time running away from ourselves in life, right? And we spend a lot of time hiding who we really are because, like you said, we're afraid to say, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. Because we're afraid of, we're judging ourselves for one, and then we're also afraid of the judgment that we're receiving from others, right? So I feel like judgment comes in a big way when we're learning to express ourselves. Because if we can stop judging ourselves, if we can stop judging others, it goes a long way, I think, to freeing us from being worried about others judging us. Because that's really a self-inflicted thing. People really aren't judging us as much as we think that they do, right? We're kind of conditioned that is happening, but it's not really happening because people often care about us way less than we think that they do. Even people who are really close to us are thinking about us less than we think that they probably are.
Right. And even if people are judging, like, you can choose to make it relevant or not, like, right. How it affects you, or how deeply you let it affect you, maybe I should say.
Yeah, we have, everything that we do, there's a choice involved. Like each moment of our life is a choice. And so we get to choose how that judgment, even if we are receiving actual hard judgment from someone, why do I let that affect me? How do I let that affect me? And then like ask the question, why would I let that affect me? Because
right.
If I can be myself with radical self-acceptance, then suddenly I'm this vibrant being that has all this energy, this light energy. And so I don't have to worry about anything else because I'm just kind of floating around the world being awesome.
Right. I know. And if you think about it, like, I think, at least for me, like when I think of somebody, if you're like out and about and like maybe at a concert or something, and you see somebody with like a cool outfit or like, an interesting style, like they're never the people that are the same or like fitting in. It's always somebody that like catches your eye, like, oh, that's different. So like, why would we try so hard, to avoid judgment?
Yeah. It's like we're taught to crave sameness. And yet a lot of times, like what we like is different. It's something that just stands out. I love that contrast, actually. I never really had looked at it that way. So
yeah,
that's a good perspective.
Yeah, I was actually talking to a good friend of mine the other day about this, just because, I just, to make a long story short, I lived in the city for a while. I lived on the East Coast of the U.S. and then I moved to the mountains. And, I'm in my early 30s. I don't have kids, like very much like a single lifestyle. I'm choosing to do all of these alternative forms of healing, and a lot of, I would say like the majority of my life is very like alternative, if you will. And a lot, like a huge part of, I guess, my like, emotional, spiritual journey has truly been like learning to let go of the, not even judgment. I don't love that word all the time, but just like assessment of others, like how they choose to, I guess, we can't help but like kind of like see how we stack up against people, or like how it compares to what they're doing, and like I have friends that have kids. I'm sure they look at me like, oh, it's so sad that she doesn't have kids. But like, I turn around and I'm like, that's not for me,
Yeah.
so.
I don't have kids. My wife and I don't have kids. I'm in my early 40s, or like almost mid 40s now, and
Mhm.
Stacy's older than me, but
Okay.
we spent years overseas. We were with the military on and off,
Mhm.
we don't have kids either, so I can relate to that.
Yeah. I mean, it's nothing like, the people that love you would never shame you for that. But I think it's hard to avoid,
Sure.
they're wondering or like they're questioning like why, just because it's more common to follow a certain path, I guess,
Yeah, I
societally
mean,
speaking.
for almost our whole lives, I mean, it's almost been what you're supposed to do.
Hmm.
Like you're supposed
Right.
to do these certain things, and having kids is I think one of those things that kind of
Hmm.
society expects you to do. Not maybe not your family, but at least society, your community expects it,
Right.
and your
Yeah.
family oftentimes partially does as well.
Right. Yeah.
Our family's been super cool about it, but
That's great.
yeah, so I'm happy about that. But and we didn't, and Stacey and I didn't really have to deal with society too much about it because we were overseas during our years where we probably would have had kids. So we didn't have to deal
Mhm.
with our friends and family like probably asking about it as much because we just weren't we weren't physically here.
Right.
But I think it's brave. I love that people, and I want to get this message out to people. It's one of the reasons that I do this, and I
Mhm.
love to talk to people like you, is because go out and travel. Like even if you're
Yeah.
gonna have kids, wait, go out and travel, see the world.
Mhm.
Like go figure out who you are. Like go figure out what you love in the world, and go figure out what you're passionate about. Because you know we've gone through these times. Like when I was growing up, we were taught you got to get a 4-year degree, you got to go to college for 4 years, you got to get a job, and you know,
Mhm.
and then now it's like, okay, you don't have to go to college, but you can still get a good job, but you got to go get a good job. And then we're taught like sometimes like, oh, you can't make money doing that.
Yep.
When in reality, you can usually make money doing almost anything.
Now, yeah, for sure.
If especially in the 21st century with
Mhm.
yeah, with the internet.
Right.
The sky is the limit, really. Like you just have to figure out what you're passionate about, and I feel like finding purpose, I call it dharma, finding a higher purpose. How
Mhm.
does that how does that come up for you, both as an individual and then when you're helping people?
I think for me, like part of my purpose, I feel, is to help people. And then part of my purpose is to, like, I have this responsibility to myself to, like, continually learn and grow from other people. So it's kind of like, a symbiotic relationship a little bit. Um, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not rewarding to, like, have something really hit home for somebody. It's hard to remove my ego from that a little bit. But, I mean, if as long as I feel like I'm putting good out into the world, I feel like I'm serving my purpose, um, both personally and like interpersonally.
Sure.
So, yeah. What's your answer?
Oh, my answer for purpose?
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm actually really similar. I was in the dark for so long. Like I had trauma and all this stuff that I was dealing with that I couldn't let go of. And you talked about letting go of stuff earlier, and I was the same way.
Mhm.
There's all this stuff that I couldn't let go of, and finally one day when I was able to let go of it, I decided this took me a long time to do this. So what if I could help people help themselves in a way that it wouldn't take them as long, and
Yeah.
that so I feel like my purpose almost is helping people find their own purpose, and their own peace and their own ability to free themselves of these things that are holding them down.
Yeah. Like help, like, yeah. I want to help them help themselves
Yeah,
almost. I don't know if you've heard, like, there's some quote, and I'm not going to do it justice, but something to the effect of like, healers don't heal you, they like show you how to heal yourself. And
yeah,
that's definitely something I subscribe to pretty heavily.
for sure. Yeah, and I think I don't believe that we can be completely spiritually free if we're not, and I mean it's hard to be completely spiritually free because we got our mind and ego to deal with, but but aside from that, like it's hard to be spiritually free if you're not aligning your life with the purpose that you're meant to go do, you know? So I feel like for me, I feel like it's the central thing for people is like, what do you know, and it's fine. Like some people might know what their purpose is and say, oh, you know, but I've got this job over here and it pays great. So I don't mind working 8 hours a day in that job because I get to go do this thing over here. And that's okay. So some people know it and find the line. But a lot of people don't know it at all and don't pursue it and don't align it with their life. And for me, that's kind of tragic.
Yeah, I think like I kind of live in this like in between world right now because I do have a 9 to 5 job that is like my financial stability. And then I choose to do this, on my personal time, my own time, not necessarily for money, just mostly to, like we're talking about, like help others and fulfill my purpose. I do think that, like, kind of to your point earlier, like you can make money doing almost anything. And I wish that I was encouraged sooner to, just like look into things that really truly interested in me instead of trying to like be impressive to this outside world. Because I think if you put enough time and effort and passion into something, eventually it'll grow into something that, will be sustainable for you or, meaningful in more ways than just, for fun. It can be a sustainable,
Right.
it can sustain you.
Yeah. No, I think patience is really important. We're in such like an instant gratification society that I find that if I ask the universe for something, it will generally send it to me. And it doesn't usually look exactly like how I wanted it to look or thought that it would look or maybe thought that I needed it to look. But at the end of the day, it does show up and it shows up in real ways that are impactful and meaningful for my life. But I also have to be ready to receive it. I have to be in receive mode, otherwise I'll just miss it. It'll just float on by, and I'll completely miss it. So I think it is about being open to possibilities, and it is a leap. I think there is a leap of faith involved, and then faith is a weird word because it gets associated with dogma and religion all the time. But you can just have faith in the universe. You can have faith in yourself, right? Like,
Yep.
Your inner capital S self,
Yeah.
So,
Definitely.
is there, as you're an empath, you're a psychic and a medium. Like, is there anything you've had to do to kind of like protect yourself from all the energy out there in the world that comes your direction, since you're kind of a magnet for it?
Yeah. I mean, I think, like I said earlier, like my perception of things kind of change over time. And I used to feel a pretty big need to protect myself from things that I felt were kind of coming at me like one way or another, like whether I wanted them to or not. And I think that does happen to some extent. But now I sort of look at it as like, what do I want to interact with and what do I not want to interact with? I think maybe that does come with, some time and ritual and practice or whatever. But there's a certain level of, I guess, self-awareness that I consider protection, because sometimes I find myself like, if there's a lot going on in the world or in my world personally, out of nowhere, I can just feel like anxious or depressed. And sometimes it takes a lot to like pull yourself out of that and be like, okay, does this have a root cause or is this coming from somewhere externally? And I don't necessarily feel the need to like protect myself from that. But I think in remaining self-aware, I protect my own, inner peace and like sanity, really, like by knowing what's meant to be entertained and what's meant to be released. Were you asking in terms of like entities or like spirits and things like that?
No, I think it was kind of all the above. Like, yeah, I mean, so the energy part makes a lot of sense in protecting yourself. But yeah, and I mean, from the medium side, I mean, it would be interesting to know how you approach that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do from time to time have I find myself in either like emotional or like energetic spaces where I feel maybe I'm a little bit more easily accessible to negative energies, um, or like just more, they're more influential when I'm in a certain state. I don't necessarily feel like they're like around all the time. I do think that, you know, there's some philosophy that comes with this kind of work. And I think I subscribe to the theory that once you're attuned to Reiki and or sort of commit yourself to like a higher purpose or frequency, you're like almost untouchable by like these entities, things that people like to talk about. You know, some people call them demons, like all kinds of stuff that
Sure.
can be out there. But I think it's almost like once you've achieved like a certain level, either like mentally or energetically, however you want to think of it, it's almost like you can't be bothered with that anymore. And I don't want that to come across as like arrogant or anything. It's just
Sure.
that it's been an evolution for sure. And I don't find myself really having to deal with that anymore. But, you know, there are times when I'm like in and out of sleep or, you know, a little more open and things pop up and I kind of have to either ask it to leave or, you know, just take care of myself a little bit better so that I can prevent that from happening.
That makes sense. I also think I feel what you're saying. Like as you kind of level yourself up, you don't have to worry about things that you used to worry about because you've grown. So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
a super like constructive way to look at it. And it's a big reason that people should focus on personal growth and spiritual growth because it's hard, and
Yeah.
then as you do it, it gets easier. And I think there's a fundamental truth to that. So I think it's really important. So
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
interesting. It's an interesting problem set to kind of have though to like worry about the things that come in or not. You know.
yeah. I mean, you know, there's definitely like ways and tools and things that I think people gravitate towards, you know, like crystals or rituals or journaling, like anything really. But I think ultimately, like the goal of that is to put yourself in the best place mentally or spiritually, energetically that you can, so that like that's the real protection. You know, it's like you are the protection, not necessarily like these other external things.
Yeah, it's like everything we have is within, and all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff that we use is just a tool to kind of reveal what's useful inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
It seems like you're curious about like different modalities that have been out there. I know I've seen you write about that. And
Mm-hmm.
is there any common, as you've studied all the different things that are out there, is there any common thread that you find that is just like this a truth that kind of transcends across these different tools that are available to us?
You know, I think it's kind of just like you said, everything is inside of you. It's just a matter of like believing in that because, you know, again, like growing up in religion, I think you're kind of taught by certain structures that if as long as you believe in XYZ, then you're good. But I think everything that I choose to, you know, dive deeper into these days really kind of you come out going, okay, so like really all it's doing is teaching me to,
Right.
you know, more deeply understand myself. And I think, yeah, like all the answers are really inside of us. We just have to do the work and believe in that. And yeah.
Yeah. So it's like the universal truth is what we were talking about is self. It's
Mhm.
that divine thing or that universal thing inside of us.
Yeah, I think so.
As you've so you I was raised Southern Baptist, so I was raised Christian as well, a little
Okay.
bit different, but
Mhm.
also rigid. Um,
Yeah,
so
still pretty intense.
yeah, still pretty intense. Is there, as you've studied different philosophies, different religions, different spiritual ideas. Is there any that resonate with you more than others that you think that you think?
Hmm. I don't know. I mean, truthfully, I'm not probably the most well-read person on like the intricacies of religions. Um, I know Buddhism is like incorporated into yoga, which I do a lot of yoga. So I think a lot of those principles, or yeah, it's Buddhism, right? Hinduism. I think it's
I think
Buddhism.
I think both.
Okay. Yeah. See there, I mean, great example. I'm not an expert by any means, but I think just like I take like pieces here and there
It's
from
good.
different things.
You know, you know what's really interesting as you say that? I love that answer actually because one thing I found talking to people who are psychics and mediums, who are
Mhm.
intuitives and who are empaths, I find them way less interested in like world religion and what it's all about than other people that I talk to. And I think there's probably something to that. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, I think again, like sometimes I feel like words fail me when I try to explain concepts, but
I get that.
it's such an interesting experience to be able to like tap into this like just sea of endless knowledge kind of thing, and it's
Yeah.
almost like, you know, I don't at that point like if it kind of just gives you this little like glimpse into like, okay, if I really need to know something, I can know it. So then it kind of flips religion on its head and
Yeah.
goes like, okay, well then why do I need someone else to tell me anything? Really? Like
Yes.
not in a again, not in an arrogant sense and not
No,
in
no,
a
not at all.
it's just mostly like it just further confirms that you have more power than some people might like you to believe, I guess.
Right. So truth is truth, regardless of. And if you've already seen it, if you've got that base kind of plug in to the universe already, which psychics and mediums tend to have, right? Then
Mhm.
then you don't need to find other ways to seek that truth because it's coming directly to you.
Yeah, and I mean, people find truth in different ways. If that's religion and that's what works for you and it makes you feel like a better person and it allows you to do good in the world, like by all means, like I don't dismiss religion at all, like altogether. It's just it's not something that I feel I resonate with at this point in my life. It did at some point, and I think it might have been somewhat of a bridge, like it bridged some gaps earlier on, but yeah, it's just once you I don't know, I guess it's just a shift of perspective really cuz like once you have certain experiences and you can't unsee certain things, it's like that's my new truth now, and if it doesn't jive with some other things, then like I have to kind of adjust going forward, you know?
Yeah, it does keep coming back to perspective. I think like
Mhm.
um, that's why I always encourage people like you've got your perspective and try to create great perspective for yourself. That's kind of what growth and the spiritual journey is all about. But also
Mhm.
try to see that perspective of others so that you can because it's so hard because we every person I think about this sometimes everybody we walk there's all these stories out there people are going through their own stuff and we always forget to look at the world from other people's perspectives. I mean, I think we can abstractly know it and I think
Mhm.
we get taught that. I think like the golden rule, like do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I think there's great wisdom there in that. Hey, people are going through stuff just like you're going through stuff, but we forget it. I think we abstractly know it, but then when it comes to like whether we're driving in traffic or if we're having a bad day or if someone else is having a bad day, like, and I'm guilty of this. Like, we'll judge that person and say, "Well, God damn it, they're such an asshole," you know. When in reality, they're just living their life, being human, and coming from their own perspective. And the more we can kind of like have grace and empathy for those other perspectives, there's real opportunity for growth there.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, it is hard. It takes more work, like to truly fully envision yourself in someone
Yeah,
else's shoes, so to speak.
yeah,
Um, most people don't want to, I
Yeah.
guess. I don't know.
Well, it's scary out there outside of our shoes too. We're really comfortable in our own shoes, right? Like we're used to
Yeah.
it. Like okay, this is familiar.
Hmm.
So it can be disorienting. I think trying to go out there and start floating around
Yeah.
makes reality more interesting, though. I think for me. So, are there any books that you've read that spoke to you more than anything? I'm always interested to see what people are reading.
Oh man, this is funny because I was just telling somebody about this the other day, but I am awful at finishing books. I will like start like
That's
five
funny.
at a time and I have to like chip away like here and there. So I'm not I don't function super linear. Oh my gosh. I don't
I
function
got you.
super linearly as a
Right.
human. But I will say there's two that come to mind when you asked that I'm kind of working through. One is The Body Keeps the Score, which is about a psychiatrist who studies PTSD in war veterans. I think it was specifically Vietnam war veterans. And it talks about like how energetically we sort of store memories and traumas and things like that, even without maybe like conscious recollection of it. And that's that's by itself intriguing, I think, probably to a lot of people. But for me, I guess being like working in Reiki and things like that, I find myself obviously working with the physical body, but also the spiritual and like energetic bodies that I can kind of like map them out in my mind's eye. And it's interesting to see like how much can get like, stored or like blocked up, built up over time. So that's one. And then the other is called Plant Intelligence. And it's written by a professor. And he talks about how, I guess, just his experience with interacting with nature and how everything is connected in some sort of consciousness or conscious way. I think he does a really beautiful job of explaining like really complicated ideas or really intricate ideas in very understandable words.
Right.
So, yeah, so those two are good.
Yeah, I think that's
Haven't finished.
the mark of a great book is being able to explain hard concepts in ways that are easy for us to understand.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually had the Body Keeps a Score recommended to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, before by somebody. I haven't read it yet. But the book about plants, I read this book by an indigenous Native American, and Robin Wall Kimmerer is called Braiding Sweetgrass, and she talks about plant intelligence and the oneness with the universe, and it was kind of this life changing book for me. So I can appreciate the reference to the plants because I find us like I think we're increasingly some people are increasingly giving credit that there's other sentient beings out there besides humans that you look at elephants, they have funerals for their people, they visit their dead, they're just really smart if you just follow them around and look at them, right? So how can they not be sentient? How can they not be conscious? I think for me, I've always thought, well, plants are conscious. I mean, they respond if we talk to them, if we love them, they do better, and they communicate with one another. We know that now. So yeah, I think that's I'm excited to see where things go when it comes to plants because I think it's really been an underrated like focus of like both spiritual and physical study.
Yeah, I agree. I know that there's like plant intuitives out there too, like how or like people are animal intuitives too.
Right.
But I think it's interesting because you don't hear as much about plant intuitives. But yeah, I remember like being little and like, you go on car trips with your family, look out the window and just like see what you see. And I remember thinking like one of my earliest thoughts was like, I wonder why I wasn't born a tree. And I tell people that and they're like, oh, that's like, kid imagination stuff. But I think when I think about it, like I do believe in I guess maybe levels of consciousness or different degrees. I don't like
Sure.
creating a hierarchy to it, but our like consciousness might not be plants consciousness, might not be animals consciousness, or like what we think about day to day, things like that. But I do think that there is something there. And I don't know, it's just funny to look back at like some of the things that would like come up when I was little, and now I have this full blown, like grown perspective to look at it with different eyes. But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
excited too.
My sister had a tree that she used to talk to down where she lived. She lived down in on Mockingbird Lane in Dallas, and she used to
Mm-hmm.
go. She had a tree out in her front yard. And she would go just like talk to it.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and I don't know if it talked back. I'm assuming that it probably did. Uh, but and I like the idea of the different levels or planes of consciousness. Not that one's higher than the other. And
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate that about indigenous tradition, and especially Native Americans, where they think that we're like low men on the pyramid of like the level of growth of our consciousness. We're young beings. We're not elders of the earth. We're
Yeah.
newcomers to the earth. There's so much stuff that's been around for so long that can teach us things.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. And I think and we know even scientifically that studies show that people do better when they're in green space. They have better outcomes at work. They have better outcomes at school. They have better health outcomes. We
Mm-hmm.
know that if you live in green space, you will be living a healthier, more vibrant life. It's just fact.
I mean, I can attest to that. I feel like, there's always things going on in my mind and my emotions, just learning that. But when I'm outside and like communing with nature, I feel like all of that just goes quiet, and it's it's really beautiful, honestly. And I think that's probably just part of it, but I'm also really intrigued by plant medicine, kind of to your point, like the Native American culture, and other cultures too, but like the people that are really just enveloped by nature and like choose to live their lives like surrounded by it completely, use it as medicine. And I'm really intrigued by that. I know there's more studies going on with that too. I think we're on the very beginning end of all of that, but I do see that kind of growing into something at some point. Just like, chaperoned trips and stuff like that. I don't know what you're willing to talk about and not talk about, but um, yeah, I think there's so much potential.
Oh yeah, we can talk about anything. Like if you're talking about like psychedelics and ayahuasca and
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I I have friends that have had their life changed by things like ayahuasca, and I'm a huge Ram Dass fan, and
Hmm.
I loved reading about and Be Here Now because he was on the cutting edge of psychedelics with Timothy Leary at Harvard and psilocybin, and that's how he kind of had his first like spiritual moment, and that's why he went
Hmm.
to India and became a guru, was because he wanted to go find God outside of he wanted to maintain that psilocybin feeling,
Hmm.
but have that connection to the divine or God all the time. That's why he went to India and became who he became. So no, I think it's a great conversation to have.
Yeah, yeah. It's just, I don't know. I think there's something to be said about like, chaperoned trips or whatever you want to
Sure.
call them, like having somebody there to be your safety, but also like it's almost like self therapy, I guess I look at it as, because you're not necessarily like talking, it's not talk therapy, but you can kind of like have a conversation with yourself almost, if you will, and grow in different ways. But um yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
I mean
know. So
it's
intriguing.
I feel like it's like it's the earth communicating with us.
Hmm.
Like if there's got to be something to it. Like uh, there's got to be something to it. So it's it's definitely something interesting to discuss. Are you still there, or did I lose you? I think we may be having some technical problems. Just bear with us for a second here, and let's see what's going on, guys. All right. I think I lost Lindsay at the time for the time being. I think I'm still live. So I will. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm checking something. Okay. All right. Well, doesn't look like Lindsay's coming back right this second. It could be on my end, but I don't think it is. Let me check something here. Yeah, she just cut out. So, all right. Well, we were just talking about plants, and I think we were having a really kind of beautiful conversation about plants and how their vibrancy and their own like innate consciousness kind of speaks to us and changes who we are when we're around, plants and trees and out in the green space. Like we were talking about, it changes our health. It makes us healthier. It's hard to go out and be in the park or be out in the woods and be stressed. I mean, it can happen, but your stress tends to melt away when you're out there in nature, kind of doing your thing. Hold on 1 second. Lindsay's back here.
So sorry. Not sure what happened
No, it's
there.
okay. That'll happen. Always have some technical difficulties from time to time. So glad you made it back.
There we go.
Okay.
I don't know. Technology is one of those things where I find it's affected sometimes by
Computers have a mind of their own. I'm convinced that they take our personalities and our energy into account. I've had a pretty interesting relationship with them over the years because I had to work with them so closely in my job. So I definitely believe that. I'm not saying they're conscious because I don't think they are necessarily, but I believe there is some level of energy interchange between electronics and humans for sure.
I agree. I know. I was going to say, speaking of consciousness, yeah, I noticed too that like when I have like energetic things going on, like my phone battery will just like not hold a charge, like all kinds of stuff. So anyway,
that's interesting. I definitely subscribe to that. Well, we were talking about plants. One of the things I was going to ask you about is speaking of the earth, speaking of like I want to talk about being grounded. We talked a little bit about it earlier, but like if you find yourself where you need to go back to kind of center and ground yourself, or how do you do that? What do you do that really works really well for you, like day to day?
I mean, easiest thing, if whatever is available outside, I have to be barefoot somewhere, like put my feet in the grass, like
so literally grounding.
Quickest and easiest way. We probably don't want to get deep into astrology. I have a lot of earth in my chart, so I feel like that's just like it comes naturally to me. But I will say like breathing, like breath work too, being mindful of your breathing, and like even if it's just, it doesn't have to be anything fancy, like I don't do patterns or anything like that, just being mindful of like the in and out and like interacting with your body to bring you back. That helps me a lot. And then also water, like baths, showers, even just like staying hydrated. That's kind of health related or, physical body related. But yeah, like being in or around water, I've found is like, on a bad day, I'll take 2 showers, 3 showers, just like real quick, like come back to life. What about you? Anything else?
I definitely think going outside and touching the grass, like, as they say, or like having your feet actually touch the ground. I think that does make a huge difference. I've found that as well. I do bathing meditations. Like I'll grab candles and a bath pillow and like go do that. And it makes me feel a lot better because I think there's something about water that really touches us because we are water. We're 70% water. And hydration. I mean, my drill sergeant told me that hydration would fix anything. And I'm over the years, I've decided that he was right. Just drink water, lawyer, you'll be fine. So I think hydration is really one of the keys to life because people walk around not drinking enough water, and I'm so much more healthy when I drink lots of water. So I think that those are great. Those are great things. Those are great advice for people to kind of, ground themselves. And breathing, breath work
Mm-hmm.
is everything. I mean, I feel like if you're conscious of your breathing, stress just melts away. It just kind of fades into the background.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's why I like yoga so much too, because it's like I'm thinking about it, but I'm also being like guided. It's almost like having a guided meditation, but then like you're involving your physical body as well. Um, so yeah, yoga, I can't say enough about yoga. Like it does all the things, all the good things.
Yeah. I think it's like yoga provides this really interesting framework for us to be able to solve a puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of feel the same way about it. What about you talked about a little bit about your psychic abilities, your mediumship, but what about your Reiki work, your energy healing? How does that work?
So Reiki is a Japanese alternative form of healing, and essentially what happens is when you're, I guess, studying, you study under a Reiki master who has previously been attuned to this like specific vibrational sort of energy. And when you are studying under them, you get attuned by them. So essentially what they're doing is calling in this, specific sort of strand, I like to call it, of energy, like healing energy, and passing it on to people that, have the intention of doing good with it. And, it involves a lot of meditation, a lot of practice work. But so, you get attuned to it, and then once you're doing your own work, you kind of do the same thing. So you call in this healing energy and kind of act as a channel and let it sort of come through you and work in the energetic bodies of others. And it, the belief is that it's intelligent. It also has some level of consciousness. It knows how to interact with people and like what they need from it to heal. And I think, it interacts with your emotional and energetic bodies, but it also, things that go on in those bodies tend to manifest in our physical realities too. So I do believe that to some extent Reiki can affect your physical body as well.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's what I found. Light work, Reiki work. It's and the energy of our body is definitely tied to our physical well-being, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Do you get Reiki work done, or do you do Reiki work?
I don't do Reiki work. My wife does some Reiki type work, and has both on humans and animals. But
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it work on me. But no, I'm not a practitioner myself.
Okay. No, I mean, I think it's cool. I was a full-blown skeptic, to be honest. Like, I will believe in just about anything, like as long as it makes some kind of sense to me. I won't say believe. I will entertain
Sure.
a lot of different ideas. And for some reason, like Reiki just like didn't like strike a chord with me until I had it done. And I, was like seeing colors and like all kinds of stuff. I was like, okay, so there is something to this. So I like to tell people, like, if they're feeling uneasy or like just kind of questioning it, I'm like, trust me, I understand. Like I will do it now, but there was a point in time where I just like fully didn't understand
Right.
how it worked or what it, why people do it, that kind of thing. So
that's why it's so great to go out and experience new things, because you never know what's going to resonate with you and like light yourself up, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about yet? I'm sure we could probably talk for hours, but like, is there anything we haven't talked about yet that you want to be able to tell the audience about?
I don't know. I mean, I think I'm always one to encourage people to, like step outside of your comfort zone, even if it's just like a pinky toe outside of your comfort zone. Like, just see what's going on. If you're any kind of interested, follow that. And I think like I would like to add, like there's not, from my experience, there's nothing to be afraid of when it comes to all of this. So if you have any ounce of interest in experiencing it, trying it for yourself, like just do it or ask about it, like
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, a lot can happen when you just go ask and talk to someone about something.
Mhm.
Amazing things happen when we walk through those doors.
Yeah.
Yeah. That are often open to us. They're not closed. They're just there. Just go walk through it.
Right. Yeah, whenever you need them or want them.
Well, we've had your website scrolling across the ticker this whole time. We're also going to have it in the permanent show notes. So everybody check show notes for that. It'll be there.
Okay, great.
Is there any place that you'd like to direct people to your website to talk about? I mean, anything that you've got going on. We want people to be able to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is great. It has all the information you could ever want on there. I am also on Instagram and Facebook at Ineffable Alchemy. But I think, yeah, for the most part, I give readings one-on-one, and I have a retreat coming up in April of 2025. It'll be in Costa Rica. It'll be a lot of yoga, meditation, sound baths, and then a little bit of adventure hiking, surfing, that kind of thing. So it's meant to be a really sort of holistic experience. I'm really excited about that. But yeah, message me, whatever you need. We can talk. I'm open.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds great. I encourage people to go check your website out. It's a cool website. It looks great.
Thanks.
And I definitely encourage people to check the retreat out. If you've never been on a retreat, you have no idea how amazing it is. Think about when you were at camp as a kid for a week and how much happened and like how much your life changed. Like that same thing can happen as an adult. Go do it.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. So, and definitely encourage people to check that out too. Thank you so much for being a guest. Just want to
Yeah.
say that I appreciate everybody for watching. We're going to be here at the same time next week. Our co-host then is going to be a public health writer. She has her PhD in public health leadership. Should be an interesting conversation. And Lindsay, if you'll stick around with me for just a second, we'll end the stream and we can say our goodbyes.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.